Well, it's no great surprise that Tony Abbott has rejected the Gillard government's bid to revive its plan to send asylum seekers to Malaysia. The opposition leader has his own plan, but the government rejects that. Another great surprise. What that means in effect is that even though both major parties think offshore processing is the best policy for Australia, the practice looks likely to end, thanks to the politics. In a moment, the Immigration Minister, Chris Bowen, will join political editor Chris Ullman in Canberra. But first, here's a look at the day in federal parliament.
Hello, Mal. Lovely to meet you.
An awkward encounter.
Hello.
Brendan, how are you?
These leaders once enjoyed each other's company. And when needs must, they can still endure social niceties.
Can I also acknowledge the Honourable Tony Abbott, Leader of the Opposition?
I am delighted to rise this morning to support the warm and eloquent words of our Prime Minister.
Please join the Prime Minister.
Now the hostility between them is palpable, but the Prime Minister needs Tony Abbott to help rebuild Labor's shattered border protection plan.
This is too important for us to continue. Politics as usual. I will be asking Mr Abbott to work with me in the national interest.
This morning, politics as usual looked likely.
I am troubled by the way this legislation strips out protections that the Howard government thought were necessary.
That disquiet stretched to Labor's backbench. The left held an urgent meeting.
Factional meeting. Which side are you going for? A factional meeting. I'll meet first.
There was also a Labor caucus committee meeting, all convened to discuss the government's response to the High Court striking down its bid to send asylum seekers to Malaysia. The initial plan was to remove all doubt from immigration law by giving the minister unfettered power to declare any country as one for offshore processing, as long as it was in the public interest. That was condemned by left and right.
That would strip the protections currently under the Act away from vulnerable people, asylum seekers. This is draconian law, of course, and it really goes to the heart of what it is to be Australian, what it means to stand up for a fair go.
What we've seen from this government is seek to bring a bill to this place which detonates, abolishes all the protections that we have always believed should be part of the Migration Act.
At noon, the leaders met again for 15 minutes in the Prime Minister's office, and Julia Gillard unveiled a different offer. It changed the public interest test.
It would require the Minister to have regard to the national interest, would require the Minister to have regard to the two core obligations of the Refugee Convention.
The national interest test is now the only condition on the Minister in the new bill. Beyond that, it says he should seek assurances from any processing country that an asylum seeker will not be sent to a country that endangers them and that their refugee claim will be heard. It clearly says the assurances don't have to be legally binding and that the rules of natural justice don't apply. The Greens provided instant commentary.
Today's announcement by the Prime Minister is nothing short than an effort to get around the High Court, the legal system of this country, to further breach international law and to cosy up to Tony Abbott.
The Coalition raised some of its issues in Parliament.
Can the government guarantee that its proposed changes to the Migration Act provide a binding legal obligation for any designated offshore processing country not to return an asylum seeker to the country from which they are fleeing?
The government used question time to beseech the Coalition for its support.
Will we reach an agreement for the policy that both sides of this House support? Will we have an effective and lawful offshore processing regime, and can we work in the national interest?
And the Prime Minister's tone was very different from last week.
I thank the Leader of the Opposition for meeting with me today, and I thank him for indicating that the Opposition is considering the amendments that have been provided to them today.
That consideration didn't last long. Late in the afternoon, Tony Abbott delivered his response. The short answer was no. The long one is that he'll propose his own amendments which rule out Malaysia.
Proposal for amendments which will put beyond legal doubt the ability of the government to send people offshore for processing, provided they are sent to countries which have acceded to the UN Refugee Convention.